Let's talk about the Mercury retrograde beginning this week in the sign of Virgo, why that's important for Mercury, and then a little bit about what kind of folk magic things we can do to sort of honor this time throughout the month of August. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the astrology of this Mercury retrograde. And what I want to point out is, of course, on August 5th at around 12:56 a.m. Eastern time, so by 1 a.m. on the East Coast, Mercury will be retrograde. As we can see Mercury down here in Virgo at the 4th degree and 6 minutes of Virgo. So we're going to want to keep that in mind. It'll come into play a little bit later in this video. That 4th degree is going to be a part of, if you have something in that 4th degree or earlier back into Leo, the degree which we will pick out and designate in a couple minutes, you're going to want to look at your chart and say, is anything conjunct this range of degrees or is it square this range of degrees? For instance, in this case, if you have anything at 4 degrees of Virgo, I know I do, if you have anything at 4 degrees of Virgo or very close to it within 2 or 3 degrees, then you're going to say this retrograde is going to be something that maybe I notice a little bit more because there is a crucial placement, one of your personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, the sun, the moon, or one of your angles, the ascendant, the midheaven, maybe also the descendant and the IC. Also, if you have anything square to that, if Mercury by transit will be squaring something around the 4 degree of Virgo or previous in your chart, which would be in the signs of, as we can see here, Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius. So if anything is in those in the 4 degree or back towards 0 degree in your chart, then those parts of your chart, those pieces, those placements will be receiving an aspect from Mercury during this retrograde and already have when Mercury was first moving direct. So we will look at that as well. But I know that one of our primary things is, okay, Mercury's going retrograde. Is my life about to get chaotic? For some people, you may notice it more than others. The benefit here is that Mercury is very well dignified, even though Mercury is direct. Mercury is in their own terms at this point within the sign of Virgo, where they also have both domicile and exaltation dignity. They rule that sign and they are celebrated in that sign and given more renown there as well. So even though Mercury is turning retrograde, they're having an off day, but they still have a good reputation. They still have what they need to take care of themselves, and they are in their favorite spot. So we have that going for us for the first part of this retrograde. So the next thing we'll look at is how long is this retrograde going to last? And during what points of the retrograde will we see shifts or changes? Because Mercury will be going back into the sign of Leo during this retrograde. So let's take a look at the timeline of this Mercury retrograde as it goes. And it's going to be very easy. We're just going to center on Mercury here. And we're going to bring up the event navigator in Luna. And so what we get to say is, of course, we already know, and for the sake of bringing it up, we have the August 5th Mercury stationing retrograde, and that will stay with us. So the great news is Mercury stations retrograde at 4 degrees Virgo. And then sometime during this process on August 14th, Mercury will retrograde back into Leo. Mercury will retrograde all the way back to, we find Mercury on the chart, the 21st degree of Leo. So again, anywhere between 21 degrees of Leo to that 4 degree Virgo, that's the range where you want to be looking for your personal placements or your angles that we talked about a little bit earlier. If you have anything in that range, it is receiving this Mercury retrograde. It is receiving a transit from Mercury during this Mercury retrograde. So you may notice things along the lines of the natal promise of that placement, receiving some kind of backwards motion, needing extra care, needing reorganization, needing to be given attention at this point. So going back to Mercury, recognizing now that on the 28th of August, Mercury now is direct, what we'll see here is that on September 9th, Mercury will then go back into Virgo again. That is after the retrograde. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because Mercury is domicile and exalted in Virgo. So we do like that for Mercury. So at that point, we will have a direct Mercury picking up speed again. This is a really good functioning Mercury. I will likely be coming up with astrological elections or even perhaps a talisman that we will be able to do in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom. So if you are a part of the Making Magic or higher tiers in there, you will get that election automatically, and I will do the astromath for you on that one. So that is sort of our timeline. Just going over it very quickly again, we'll see that Mercury originally came in on July 25th to Virgo, stationed retrograde on August 5th at that 4-degree Virgo placement. Then during that time, we'll go back into Leo on August 14th, and we'll get all the way back to that 21-degree Leo placement before going direct again on the 28th. And then finally, direct Mercury will come back into Virgo on September 9th. And so that's kind of the story we're looking at here. It's really simple. It's really easy to pull apart. And again, this is something that it's not necessarily something you're feeling for the first time. It's something you're revisiting. You're walking backwards. One of my favorite connections between astrology and myth, of which there are so many, is the story of Hermes stealing Apollo's cows. And I feel like this is very appropriate, especially in this situation in Virgo, because the story goes that Hermes, when stealing Apollo's cows, put shoes on backwards to make it appear that he was going in a different direction than he was actually going. So this is actually a story interpretation of Mercury going retrograde, Mercury appearing to walk backwards in correlation with the sun, with Apollo. And in this case, of course, Mercury was stealing cows, which does associate with that resource, nature, and harvest kind of theme of Virgo. So we see this kind of playing out in the stories that were told many, many years ago as well. Now, it's a Mercury retrograde. Should you be doing any magic? Astrologically, no. Mercury actually is the traditional ruler of divination and some forms of magic. So when Mercury is retrograde, things can get chaotic and wonky. However, that is where folk magic comes in. And one of the things I'm focusing on with my student study tier and higher in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom this week is hearth magic or hearth work. And that is work around the house. And one of the simplest ways you can do that is simply to give your house a late summer cleaning so that you can cleanse the energy, dust everything off, make sure the space is clear, tidy things up, organize things, maybe rearrange a closet or reorganize the kitchen or do something to make the space feel more conducive to the way that you work in it. Make the space work with you so that you can work in partnership with your hearth, with your home. Again, in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom, we're talking about how to connect with your hearth in a spiritual way and even consecrate the area of your home that you would consider your hearth. We also talk about how to find it. So if you're interested in that, you can join us in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom. You would be so welcome there. But in the meantime, simply the idea of cleaning your home is magic this month. So you can actually use that and make it feel a little bit more like a magical journey. And I hope that it feels that way. I hope Mercury retrograde treats you well and that you find a lot of constructive ways to improve the quality of life aspects in your life so that you have that to work with. Thank you guys so much. I will see you again soon when we talk about the next lunation.